Hey everyone, I just wanted to do a video doing a little bit of summary recap of the book that I've already done a couple videos on, and this one's called Voltaires Bastards by John Ralston Saul, and I thought it was really interesting, and I just thought I'd like to do a little recap of it for everyone, for myself and also for the audience. So let's start off. Who are Voltaire's Bastards, coming from inside his book, and obviously spoiler alert. So Voltaire's Bastards are the inheritors of the Age of Reason, so the people that came after were inspired by Napoleon and inspired by Voltaire and a guy named Loyola, who was a priest in Italy, and a couple other people who Ralston Saul just credits with the discovery of, or the development of modern education, the development of modern technocratic systems of governance, and leadership as well has been defined by these people in a lot of ways. So I'd like to begin with speaking about technocrats in the making and Loyola. So Loyola specifically was a person that he was found very interesting and obsessed with. I usually find that authors would focus on one or two historical figures and really focus on how those people affect the world. So, and they might be obscure characters that most people aren't aware of. I think I've heard of this guy before, but I didn't actually do a lot of research into him. So Loyola was Spanish priest and theologian who founded the religious order called the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, and became its first superior general. The Jesuit order served the Pope and missionaries and were bound by vows of special obedience to the sovereign pontiff in regards to the mission. They therefore emerged as an important political force during the time of the Counter-Reformation. So basically what he did was the Jesuits were in charge of education, and they developed into something else, which became the like the business schools, like the Polytechnique in Paris in France, and in other ones they had basically they have made the system of technocrats, but then there's also more to it. So you don't just have the school teacher, who this guy is, or the schoolmen. You would basically have the hero complex. You have the politician who follows the hero complex, like the Napoleon, Alexander the Great style hero, and then you'll have them move forward to a system where modern times basically has these people who are not great generals, or not great writers, or not great thinkers, but they still held these positions of power because bureaucracy has been overwhelmed by the technocratic system of doing things. So just to get back to this again, so at the beginning, he goes into, it says, John Ralston Saul goes out against Harvard and against the business schools. He talks about Harvard and the failures of the case study business model training style, plus its limitations, and how this ties into Voltaire. So Voltaire's Bastards are the product of the Age of Reason, without the wisdom to know their own limitations and flaws. So when he's talking about technocrats, he means people in the bureaucracy whose main ability is to manipulate systems and not actually to accomplish tasks or to be good at things or to be skilled at anything really. They just are good at manipulating systems and manipulating people. And it sounds a lot like the sophists from ancient Greece as well. So basically he talks of technocrats and how they control the public with appearances and the copies of powerful images and hero archetypes, hero complexes, etc., morphing from warrior hero into the ancient world to religious leaders, to political athletes, the celebrities, and now to politicians who are trying to be celebrities in their own right. A refusal to show panic related to how World War I tactics were done. So all of this is going together to show that the way that I already did a video on this, so if you want to refer back to that, I'd rather not do an entire thing on that. But basically just panicking is seen as unprofessional, and the government is seen as the ultimate force of certitude and fortitude and all of those etudes. And so he also goes on to talk about corporations and how people haven't got the mental faculties in place to really comprehend large sums of money, trillions and billions of dollars that the government throws around, etc., and really understand how much it is and how much they're really negotiating with, and what's on the line, and what is spent on defense, and what goes into so-called black ops or black budgets, whose actual details are shielded from public view, sometimes forever, but sometimes for a large amount of years. They won't even know what you're spending the tax dollars on. how taxes are squandered, but also how the computer age and credit cards generated almost an infinite sea of numbers that humans don't have the minds yet to really comprehend, because such large sums of money don't actually exist in the world, just on paper and in the online networks. So he talks about debt, and he talks about the money system and how the bureaucrats are really ruining everything basically, and just taking on more and more debt because they can, and trying to reassure the public and destroy panic, or even some kind of reasonable panic about how bad things are going in order to maintain control. This I found really interesting, and I thought I should share this. Speaks about how arms dealing is not profitable. It's the illusion of creating profit and putting people to work, or make work project occurring in the U.S. and between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia right now. This dangerous illusion that arms deals make us safer is a farce that governments often try to play up in order to demonstrate how many jobs they created and how much value it creates. In Saul's opinion, it doesn't create wealth or prosperity for the nations that engage in arms dealing, because most weapons don't get used in modern times by first world powers, and they get stockpiled and eventually become obsolete as the new governments come into power, and they need to buy even more weapons to keep up with the technological progress. Basically, the arms deals don't even make us safer a lot of the time, because they actually go to our enemies or terrorists or rogue states, etc., due to the fact that there isn't really any practical way to maintain control over weapons once they are sold to second or third parties globally. And also, countries often sell weapons to other countries that are their enemies for the sake of maintaining their superpower, their superior position of power in the global military and economic order. For example, Britain used to have a rule that they used to have a large part more of military and ships in the Navy, especially because that's how the ancient world maintains naval supremacy. They would make sure that their Navy was much stronger than the largest two of their the largest other world powers at the time in the ancient colonial world. They are competing with, the U.S. is competing with Britain and France at this point for superior arms dealing. They're competing with Britain and France as the biggest arms dealers in the world globally, and back in JFK's day, he was brought in, and the U.S. was engaged in a plan, I think it was called the Marshall Plan, which in my opinion was crazy and not well thought out, because the U.S. was apparently, pre-Kennedy, was literally giving away free weapons and military equipment to other countries which they believed to be their allies, but it was shutting Britain and France out of the market, preventing them from selling their own weapons and hardware and military-grade weapons around the world. So the U.S. was using it as like a foreign policy, but also as an economic system to strategy to shut out the Europeans. So JFK decided to change things and said that the U.S. was now, and it wasn't a good idea because he was losing money, he said the U.S. was now going to change policy and start telling their allies that it was the right thing to do to buy weapons from the USA, and that what the allies did, that they wanted to be allies, they would purchase weapons and they would gain U.S. support that way. It operated sort of like an economic stimulus plan, as well as purchasing the loyalty of the U.S. and their advanced technology to some degree, which is a huge change in global policy, because usually countries would attempt to keep things secret from each other and not give out weapons and technology, but all that changed in the modern era. We now arm everyone. The difference is that not all armies are all well trained enough to actually effectively use the technology and the complicated machines that they've actually purchased. So most of the third world countries that actually do have access to these weapons don't have the proper personnel to use them, which is both good and bad, I guess you could say, because you know that they're not going to be able to use it against us in any significant way, but you definitely know that they do have these things, and with enough training and enough time, eventually they will. So you know, we've basically compromised ourselves by allowing all of these military secrets out. The Age of Reason produces Napoleon, which has also been imitated over and over again throughout history, just as Napoleon was imitating Alexander the Great. Napoleon is seen as the quintessential technocratic, atheist, secular hero of the Age of Reason by Saul. Him and Napoleon, in his view, really shaped the whole technocratic hero complex of the modern world. Mentioned something about his other contemporaries like George Bush, Brian Mulroney, former French leaders like de Gaulle and Jacques Chirac. Also talks about Mary Le Pen a little bit and her father, and about Donald Trump, and about a lot of other people who he talks about who are contemporaries of him back in his 20 years ago, but also up today as well. Current Current leaders, in his opinion, resemble technocrats he mentioned from history who inherited the age of reason from Voltaire and Loyola and seem to go to metaphorical war with, and he seems to go to medical war with the technocrat inheritors, believing they have led Western society astray and all others who come into contact with it, and the model of their leadership style turns everyone into failures basically once they start modeling it off the Western system, even though the Western system is displayed as the best system. Its results actually destroy us. And he's not wrong to some degree. It's an interesting idea to really associate what's wrong with the Age of Reason and how it morphed itself into the self-assured atheistic dictatorship of corporate powers. He blames the right, or what he considers the new right, and a lack of criticism of powers like the president or like a president or a corporation or financial leaders or the media. And he says that these people don't attack politicians or don't attack power enough. Well, in today's world, we obviously know that's not true because every politician and everything is mudslinging. The CNN is fake news. Like everyone is pushing their fake news agenda. So I really don't think that the lack of criticism is really a big issue of politicians in today's world. I think the problem is actually a lack of transparency and a lack of ethics going on in politics. And the fact that a lot of the things that they're put into place now force them to act unethically. So yeah, I found it odd that he blames something called the new right. So I guess the alt-right obviously hasn't even been put into the cultural lexicon yet, but I'm sure it will eventually. Which is true, but at this point he believes people won't criticize each other partly because of the professionalism of the technocratic class, which denies them the right to attack each other in a way that would allow the control of the public to be momentarily lost, and that people might question their leaders or the system. So he blames technocrats for this, which I 100% agree. Which is true, but it's now more about partisan ideological battle from the authoritarians versus libertarians, and also the left versus right, and also the secular world versus the religious world. So there's so many modern conflicts going on. It's not just the lack of criticism is maybe from the media, maybe happened during the George Bush era, but right now there's no lack of criticism for every world leader. I mean, come on, let's be honest, like all of us live in the modern world, and if someone thinks that, speaking truth to power, like I'm sorry, everyone's speaking truth to power now, it's just that they're clamping down on freedom of speech to prevent us from speaking. It's not that we're not speaking, it's that they're trying to kill us for doing so. So for some reason, he takes a random shot at men in general on college campus and university campuses by repeating the now well-known myth of college campus rape culture, which foreshadows the failing attempt at the left and the radical feminists to suggest that Western college campuses are more dangerous for women than any other place in society. And when I read this, I was upset with him because it's stupid and it's ridiculous and it's easily disprovable. Sorry if you hear something in the background, that's the bunny moving. Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous, and since we've already dealt with this so many times, all the way through all these social movements and through all of these, all the modern progress through these issues, I think that it's pretty obvious that Western college campuses are factories that assemble SJWs and feminists. They don't create rapists, and to say that all men are rapists or that even a large percentage of them on college campuses are rapists is just misrepresentation. So I found that extremely disturbing, but it was liberal foreshadowing for his future. He doesn't really hit communism as hard as he hits capitalism at all, really going soft on criticism of the influence of violence and violent revolutions that they attempt to foment throughout history. He does mention Trump, however, which I found humorous. One of the weirdest things I saw was that he blames Russian imperial instability and a combination of Western technocratic ideas of development combining with the failing society to create the fall of the Soviet Union instead of communism itself being responsible for the fall, which I thought was really odd. I found this extremely odd and mildly disturbing when I kept reading, because it's obvious from reading history and communism itself was a mistake, and Stalin was a mass murderer of his own people, and the Soviet Union was a paper tiger which couldn't support itself because of communist ideals and a failed socialist propaganda system. So communism was why communism destroyed itself from the inside. It wasn't, the West plus the pre-Tsar era, the pre-communist Tsar era was not the only things. They were part of it, obviously. Like, I believe that technocrats destroy all systems they get into, and I believe that the kings and queens, the Tsar of Russia was clearly not a good person. The Romanovs were not good people. So okay, so for their own people, they didn't treat their own people well, let's say. So okay, that's fair. but I don't think that it's fair to say communism wasn't responsible for the fall of Russia. Like, that's just stupid. Ends off with an analysis of how to proceed with a better understanding of a way forward, which would be to read up on technocrats mentioned in the book in order to really evolve past the age of reason and learn the lessons that our predecessors did not learn. We would need to ask more questions of our leaders and to elect more responsible people who aren't technocrats. Being an expert is good, but we should not be a society of experts who are unable to question each other and who are practically totally incompetent and not doers and not thinkers. Simply remain people who are good at navigating systems and are using the systems to their advantage to avoid responsibility or to change or to avoid change or to do anything really revolutionary. So when I use the word revolutionary, I mean it in a technological sense. I don't mean it in a let's get black clad and throw bricks through people's windows. I mean like actual revolution, one that takes place with education and intelligence. And I think that doesn't take place with bricks and mortars and Antifa. It doesn't take place in that. And if you look through history, I don't think that they had a huge impact. They actually Antifa failed in their attempts to destroy Nazism, obviously, because Hitler took over. So good job, Antifa. You've ruined everything for everyone, and you've become part of this system, because I believe that technocrats, one of the identifying characteristics of technocrats is that they manipulate systems. And I find it very interesting that feminism and Antifa and social justice warriors have all taken on this mantle of a technocrat, but it's a semi-technocrat mantle, because I don't believe that they actually are full technocrats, obviously, because they don't wear suits, they don't wear the uniform, right? So they don't conform, but to society's rules. They try and conform society to their rules, but their manipulation of systems is masterful. So just to end off, my dad added a really interesting aspect of this. He told me that John Ralston Saul is also the husband of Adrienne Clarkson, who is the previous Attorney General of Canada. So I thought that was really interesting, and he seems to be, Ralston Saul, he seems to be a good guy. I really like his opinions, and I really like some of the things that he says in terms of his analysis. His writing is great, but I disagree with his politics in a lot of ways. Even though I am a liberal, a classical liberal, I don't think that he understands truly how dangerous communism is, or he doesn't want to. And I found his it was very interesting. So he goes after the upper class first. So he attacks the technocrats, politicians, rich people, etc. And he attacks Ralph Lauren, which I thought was really weird, obviously, because I wear Ralph Lauren all the time. I'm like, oh no, right? But he basically attacked Ralph Lauren for selling people the upper middle class dream, basically selling them clothes that fake that. And I'm going to do a video on that later, on Ralph Lauren and on what I think about the clothes that you wear and the way you comport yourself. And I think that basically he attacks both upper class and lower class. So at the beginning he attacks the upper classes. Oh, they're so hoity-toity, and they're so classist, and they think they're so much better than everyone else, undeservedly. But then he goes after people in the middle class and the lower class by saying, oh, these people want to buy clothes like Polo, Ralph Lauren stuff to make them look rich, and they want to buy into the dream, and rather than being rich, I guess. I don't know. So clearly he has a problem with the upper and the lower class, but he presents them in very strange ways. But I thought they were still a useful insight into the upper class Canadian mindset, or the liberal upper class Canadian mindset, anyways, from past years. And I thought it was really interesting that he brought up a lot of characters that people don't usually spend a lot of time talking about. So he brought up Loyola. So I hadn't heard of this character before, but I didn't credit him with the creation of modern education the way he does. And I thought it was really good, but it put me in a different mind state, because it's like reading Noam Chomsky for me, because he is a brilliant writer and he has so much information, but I feel that the only thing that he fails to do is really take a really good look in the mirror, and to actually look at communism and socialism and see how they were responsible for failures and for death and for destruction. So I don't know if he can really say that he's done everything that he wishes to do, but he hasn't done everything that I feel is necessary to really look at history through a non-ideological viewpoint, because I can tell that there are some libertarians and some right-wingers and some left and some classical liberals and some progressives that are good, and that are good people and have good intentions and logical, consistent methods. And I think that we shouldn't always paint everyone with the same brush. But either way, I think that it was really valuable read, and I think everyone else should read it too if they want to. And there's a couple more. I have a couple more videos on this too, so go check them out if you have time. Thanks, I really appreciate that if you made it to the end of the video, and have a good one.